G'day there, Ray Corcoran here. In this week's video, we're going to go over how do you make over $200,000 a year and what are the key things that you need to do to make that happen. So in this video, I'm going to go over what types of jobs actually pay over $200,000. What are the common traits between each of these jobs? They have a lot of things in common, which I think are important for you to note. How I did it personally and how I went beyond that. And finally, what do you need to do for your own career? Where are your weak spots that you need to work on so that you can increase your earning potential and get to whatever financial goals you want to get to much faster. So what types of jobs actually pay over 200K? So before we actually try and go on this quest to make a lot of money, we should actually probably just look at, what stuff already pays quite a bit of money. Now, for many of you, you're probably gonna have some guesses around what pays a lot, and you'd probably be right. One of my previous videos I did on the top 10 highest paying jobs in Australia, and you don't have to go watch it if you don't want to, but the main things were, roles like being CEO, obviously, doctors and surgeons, lawyers and judges, people in mining, people in finance, and obviously small business owners. You can get a bit of an idea of some of the types of jobs that pay really well. Other jobs that pay quite well, stuff like IT contracting. I used to do IT contracting back in the day. Many people getting paid $700 a day, $1,000 a day, and that sort of stuff. And it sounds like crazy money, but it's actually quite common to get paid that sort of number, with a few years of experience, of course. And there's a lot of money to be made in IT contracting. Another one is high-end sales. So if you're selling basically anything expensive, so that could be property sales, you could be a real estate agent, you could be helping a developer sell property. There's also stuff like enterprise software sales. Some of these deals can be quite a significant amount of money, and you can make quite good money off the back of that. But what I wanted to do now is go over what are some of the common traits between these roles. Many of the roles that I just mentioned often require many years of study or learning before you can get paid the big bucks. So I guess the first lesson is making sure that you stick with it long enough to get paid well. Most people just dabble in different things and they do 1% here, 1% there, 1% there. They never really go deep enough into one thing. They go wide, but they don't go deep. And when you go deep, you typically make a lot more money because you get to a point where you have 10 years experience, 5 years experience, 12 years experience in one particular thing. And it's easy for you to justify being paid more because you have a rare level of experience and skill. The next thing to understand is typically you will have a high degree of responsibility. So if you are someone, I know earlier in my career, I was actually trying to get paid the maximum amount of money for the littlest amount of work. Very soon after, I realized that that's really not possible, or it's very uncommon to do so. You shouldn't be trying to avoid responsibility. You should learn how to manage responsibility and deal with having a lot of responsibility on your shoulders. So don't run away from it or try to avoid it, but just embrace it and understand that the people that get paid the big bucks are typically responsible or accountable for big things. So the more that you can get comfortable with that and used to being the final point of contact for stuff, the more that you can probably you can justify being paid. The next thing is being the top 5% of your industry. So whether you have a business or you're in an individual job, you should always be aiming to be the top 5% of your department, of your state, of your country, of your industry. You always want to gravitate towards that by being someone that invests a lot in their own skill set, invests a lot in improving their technical ability so that, you are one of the rare number of people that can do a task to an extremely high standard. If you are common and you have an average amount of skill, an average amount of relationships, an average amount of work ethic, guess what? Your pay is probably going to be average or below average because everybody's kind of doing the same thing. You want to become someone who does what is not common in that industry. The next factor to consider is relationships. So a lot of these roles, you can't just move up willy-nilly. You have to build relationships with people. And this is an area that personally I neglected a lot early in my career. I thought that if you were good at your job, naively, that you would eventually move up. And some companies, good companies, will probably identify that and you will move up, but many, you will not move up unless you have relationships and visibility with higher people in the company. Being someone that is the hardest worker or the quietest achiever is not the approach that you want to have, because there are some companies where the quiet achiever just stays in that spot forever. If you don't want that to be you, then you do have to be a bit more vocal about what projects you're working on and what outcomes you're delivering, and don't be ashamed to talk about that. If you're looking to build relationships within any company, I would really recommend talking to people at multiple levels. So one thing that I did is I reached out to 10 people who were basically doing what I wanted to do in the marketing industry. And I didn't think basically any of them would reply. I thought one or two maybe. 9 of them replied and 8 of them said yes to either meeting in person or speaking over the phone. And that really shocked me. And they were very forthcoming with their advice because I was just like them 10, 15, 20 years ago. They were actually very, very open to share, just like I am now, to someone that maybe is a marketing graduate. I help lots of people who message me on DMs about getting into the marketing industry or how to succeed in the marketing industry. And I'm happy to help them because I know how confusing it can be in those early stages about what to focus on and what maybe niche to specialize in. And if you're looking to move up in a company, one thing I'd recommend is build a track record for doing small things well. If you get asked to get the coffee, don't stuff up getting the coffee, because if you can't even get coffee, why would I offer you something mid-level for you to do? You couldn't even do a basic thing. So don't think because it's a small task, take it very seriously and develop a reputation for someone that can deliver stuff on time, whether it's small or big. The next common thread between a lot of these roles is leadership. So this is again another area that I totally neglected, and I was, in my opinion, technically pretty good at my job, but in terms of leadership, I had no idea, and I didn't even try to improve that area because I thought I would figure it out once I got into the role. And that was a big mistake because people are looking at your leadership potential. They're looking at what kind of leadership you're showing now, not what you're about to show when you start learning it in the role. They want someone that has some early progress on leadership. So don't wait until you are in the role, because you won't be, before you start learning about leadership and managing people. Don't boss around people that are your peers, and don't be a jerk. Start to think about how you can be a leader and be the person that's always putting their hand up regardless of other people's opinions. Look at what great leaders do. Help out other members in your team. So you might have this as your role, but also help out some others get their outcomes as well. And that's a natural way to become a leader, even within your own team at work, because you're the person that does your role plus helps others achieve their outcomes as well. And your coworkers will actually like you for it and naturally think that you will be a good position for future leadership stuff. The final thing to consider when it comes to the common traits between all these high-paying jobs is you need to choose your industry and role wisely. Usually it comes down into 2 buckets: stuff that is close to the money or stuff that is very, very rare. Is there examples of people getting paid high amounts of money in that particular industry? If you're a hairdresser, who is the highest paid hairdresser in the world? How many people are making that kind of money? If it's not many, that's not to say that you can't be in that industry, but it might show to you that not as many people can make those kind of big bucks. If you want to make the big bucks and stay in that industry, then you're going to have to be pretty damn special. Part of the reason I chose marketing was that if I could help someone generate inquiries for their business, which ultimately leads to money, it's easy to justify paying a good marketing person a lot of money because I'm making them even more than that much money. Same for sales. If you are selling things, ideally you get good at selling very expensive things so that you can get paid a very, very good commission. That's why people are gravitating towards real estate, enterprise software, and all those kind of expensive things where if you can become a good salesperson and you're in the top 5% of that, you can be making crazy money. Now, in this section, I'm going to talk about how I did it for myself, and I won't give you the long, boring story. At a high level, I was in a day job in marketing and sort of business analyst roles. It wasn't bad, but I wasn't super happy either, and I knew that I kind of liked doing things my own way. I started to hatch a grand scheme to exit the corporate life, which, it was okay, but wasn't for me, and transition out of that. Initially, it didn't make me more money, and for a while, I was making less money than what I was making and making less money than my friends, and I was starting to think after a while to be like, oh my God, have I done the wrong thing, and is this gonna pay off? Because your friends, they stay in their job, you've left your job, and their salaries are increasing bit by bit, and you're starting to think, well, I'm getting further and further behind. Have I chosen the right path? Ultimately, it did work out, and it ended up working out significantly better than had I stayed in that day job. And while there's nothing wrong with day jobs, you need to understand what works for you and map out a path where you can get paid, good money within, I believe, a timely fashion. In the role that I was in, I could have made probably about $300,000 a year-ish eventually, but I might have been 45. And there's nothing wrong with that. But for me, I had a goal to do that significantly sooner, and staying in that job would have got me there, but several years after I wanted to. Something had to change, and I had to get off that track. And I started building websites for people. Eventually, once I finished the website, they would ask, how do we get people to the website? So I started to learn the basics of marketing. And fast forward a few years, and I still do that today. I have a marketing agency, grow.com.au, and basically we do, Google ads, Facebook ads, consulting, and local SEO. I still do that now, but the first few years were not paying any better than my day job. But the benefit and the point I want to make is switching from job to business is not for everyone, but it can be the thing that causes you to have above average income. Because for me, in my day job, the chances of me making more than I was making before, it was very rigid. For me to get a 20 grand pay rise would be a big deal, and it wasn't easy. Whereas for me to make a 20 grand more in my business, I know that I can do it if I put in a dramatic amount of effort. You can kind of create money a lot easier. It gives you a lot more flexibility around your income. And if you're a hard worker and you're committed and you're good at what you do, eventually, after years of practice, you can actually have a high degree of control over your income. And I think for me, it was one of the best financial decisions I ever made, because now I'm off the track of someone else's choice about what I should get paid, and I'm back into the driver's seat, and I can get paid many more times that these days because I've decided to take on the extra stress and risk of running the business myself rather than being part of somebody else's business. Finally, in terms of how you can actually do this for yourself. So if you have any income below 200,000 and you want to be making, a couple hundred grand a year and above, one thing that I'd recommend is doing a bit of a mini audit. Are you top 5% in your industry? If you're not, who are the top 5% in your industry? Can you reach out to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them in the next month? The answer is yes, you can. Also, in terms of skills, where are you strong? Are you good at the technical or the main part of your job, but are you good at leadership? Do you think people around you think that you're leadership material? If not, how can you start to display those leadership skills and start to practice it? You want to have some level of leadership skills before you go into a leadership role, ideally, because that's going to make it easy for the hiring manager to pick you, because you already demonstrate many of the things. They want someone that is pretty much ready to go into that role. And the final thing is, make sure that you are super, super committed and consistent. The easiest way to beat the average person is just being consistent and committed. Most people are very not committed. They're distracted by phones. We'll look back at this generation many years from now as the most distracted generation, because these phones are so damn addictive. If you can be someone that is laser focused, all in, has the blinkers on, and is locked in to this particular goal, you will win eventually. There's no way that you can't win if you stick with it long enough. Ignore what people say on social, ignore maybe even what many of your friends or family think. If you stay locked in on that one thing about being the best salesperson in enterprise sales in that industry, or you want to be the number one real estate agent in your state, if you are fully focused and locked in on that, you'll be making much more than 200 grand in a few years. You'll be surprised at how much more you can make over time. You'll hit 200 grand, you won't stop there, because your skills keep growing, your network keeps growing, maybe your individual or company reputation keeps growing. Once you get to that milestone, you'll realize that there's several levels above that as well. So, which is very, very exciting and part of the reward of doing above average amounts of work. So I hope you found that useful. That's my mini crash course on how to make 200K plus per year. It is a very, very worthwhile endeavor, and it is literally life-changing if you can pull it off. Because once you've made 200 grand, you can never go back. Mentally, you'll know that you can do it. And even if you do make less in the future, your brain has been permanently stretched, and you'll know that it is possible, you are capable of it, and you've done it once and you can do it again, and then beyond that as well. Let me know in the comments if you liked the video, and other than that, I'll see you on the next video. Cheers.